We probably should talk about the Ascot.
What are you hiding, Freddy boy?
I like how it looks.
Why does Fred wear an ascot? As a Scot myself, I had to know, right? Like, it's become this iconic part of his character, but it wasn't intended to be.
Here we go with another mystery.
It's no secret that Hanna-Barbera cartoons were animated incredibly cheaply, and that's not an insult, right? That's precisely what they were going for. TV networks in the 1960s were constantly searching for anything to fill airtime, and Hanna-Barbera was the budget-friendly option by design. Like, literally by design, like by character design even. I talked about this before in my video about the laugh track in early Scooby-Doo cartoons, but nearly every Hanna-Barbera character was designed with some piece of clothing or accessory around their neck, even if it didn't make sense, just so it would be faster and easier to swap in different head and facial expressions without having to draw the rest of the body for every frame.
Now things are beginning to make a little sense.
Every member of Mystery Inc. has one of these neck dividing lines, with the exception of Shaggy, whose baggy V-neck required a bit more care in animation to hide the seams, if they even tried to hide them at all. Scooby has his collar, Velma her turtleneck, Daphne her scarf, and Fred his ascot. I mean, it's definitely an ascot, right?
Hey, Scott.
When the late great artist Iwo Takamoto was designing the Scooby Gang in the 1960s, he drew inspiration for the character's sense of style from the mod fashion movement of the time, a style revolution that embraced sharp lines, bright colors, and a blend of high fashion with casual wear as a reaction against the drabness of post-war fashion.
London is all shook up by a rock and roll fashion show of the latest Carnaby Street gear. The clothes are with it, and the buyers don't want to be left without it.
As far as I understand it, which is to say, probably poorly, mod fashion represented teenage rebellion in a kind of counterintuitive way, especially for young men who wore a lot of collared shirts and suits and neckwear, things in a vacuum you might associate with a more corporate or conformist sense of style, but in context, it does make sense. The colors were bolder, the cuts were more streamlined and fitting, and most importantly, it was meant to be kind of ironic, right? Like, the Beatles dressed to the nines for Ed Sullivan, sure, but they did so with their unconventional mop-top hairstyles while rocking out to songs with themes of freedom and self-expression. You know, it's basically the same as any early 2000s punk rock artist wearing skinny ties. This juxtaposition of formal attire with rebellious counterculture has a long history, and Fred's mod-era ascot places him squarely in that tradition. Basically, Fred Jones is punk rock. But there's a little bit of an issue here, right? Fred's ascot was merely meant to be a fashion fad of the time, and it was already kind of out of style. The mod fashion era burned so hot and fast in the early to mid 60s, but started fading into the more psychedelic hippie culture by the late 60s when Scooby-Doo premiered. That's not really surprising though. Almost all cartoons intended for children are actually created by 50-year-old men who think they know what the teens like. This does mean, however, that the most fashion-forward member of Mystery Inc. is technically Shaggy. My apologies, Miss Blake.
Purple is a fall color. It's the middle of May.
Now, ideally, they would have just updated Fred's character design to keep his style from feeling dated, and some iterations have, removing the ascot entirely like cowards and thieves of joy.
Nah.
But as we know, Hanna-Barbera at the time, when the original Scooby-Doo cartoon was airing, was averse to spending any money. They were the kind of company who could look at a circle and wonder if there was still a way to cut corners. There's no way they were ever going to redesign Fred. They already had his walk cycle and run cycle and a bunch of other character pose templates that they could reuse indefinitely. Author and animation historian Jerry Beck said specifically,
Fred's ascot, a fashion trend of that moment, they just kept it going out of economic necessity.
And as the cartoons would continue, Fred's ascot only looked more and more out of place until it sort of wrapped around to being funny, right? Like, this cheap cosplay replica I got from Amazon is made out of some sort of itchy synthetic fabric, but I believe it was the Cartoon Network bumpers that first revealed it to be made of joke material. I'm so funny.
Nice neckerchief. dork.
Huh? That's my lucky Ascot.
Ascot? Man, that thing must get steamy.
Would anyone really wear something this hideous?
I'm a cartoon star. I have more people telling me what I want to wear.
From here, along with the live-action films, Fred's signature neckwear started to come into focus more and more as a design choice the writers weren't afraid to call attention to.
What's the Ascot? I got an Ascot for each of you.
I also ordered these Ascots from Amazon, which are radically different than this one that I'm wearing. I know I look cute, but I gotta take it off. Like, you're seeing what I'm saying, right? Very, very different. This is an Ascot, right? I mean, these ones were clearly labeled as Ascots and also cravats, but the orange one is... That's weird.
Fred doesn't wear an ascot.
Okay, we have to get to the bottom of this. Humans have been tying things around their necks for at least years, but the first people to do it were honestly just trying to stay warm and dry, not fashionable and cool. But when it does come to fashion, there are loads of things that people tie around their skull stems, right? Like I said, these were labeled as both ascots and cravats. So I thought I would just start there. What's the difference? Thankfully, I found an extremely specific but helpful book called Collars, Stocks, and Cravats, and it even has a lot of helpful diagrams on the inside. Great for visual learners, but I'm a hands-on learner, so let's see if I can get one of these going. Now, according to the book, the most common origin story for the cravat dates back to the 1600s with the 30 Years' War. It's kind of difficult to explain this war in like a brief sentence or two, but it was deeply religious, very chaotic. Europe is messy. For our purposes, what matters is that nearly every army relied heavily on hired soldiers. Among the most prized forces were that of the Croatian mercenaries, who had just been lured over to France's side when they entered the war in 1635. There's a hole here somewhere. I gotta drag this through. There we go. No way. These mercenaries wore simple strips of fabric around their necks, either draped or knotted, like I'm trying to do here. And this was to aid in protecting their necks in battle from the weather or swords, I assume. And the French, being, well, French, saw these Croatian soldiers with these, pieces of fabric around their necks and thought, now that's fashion. Especially when it got to King Louis XIV, one of the original fashion influencers. Stolen valor looks damn good. Thank you, Croatian mercenaries. In fact, I believe the term cravat is just the French term for Croat, like a person from Croatia. I think I did all right. It's literally the first time I'm tying this sort of knot, but I think it looks good. And the book does clarify that the term cravat today is used as a catch-all term for really any piece of cloth tied around one's neck. So it could be a necktie, a bow tie, or even an ascot, which is why my order did label these as both cravats and ascots. And my glasses are actually getting fogged up. I look so good. But now I sadly have to undo it as we attempt the same exact thing with this guy. Already a bit of a challenge. I guess I'll try to make it like a triangle. That was kind of a similar shape. The Ascot itself was named after the prestigious Royal Ascot horse races with its own complex history of dress codes. I will never understand rich people rules. But at one point, the Ascot was a symbol of upper class fashion. Another old school fashion influencer who kept popping up in my research was a guy named Beau Brummel, who was a British dandy.
Beau Brummel started it all.
This guy spent hours trying to tie his cravats to perfection. People used to adorn their cravats with excessive ornamentation, like jewels or decorative pins. But Brummel favored a more restrained yet polished look. In his eyes, the knot itself was key. Anybody could learn how to tie a knot or a cool bow. You don't need to have expensive decoration on top of that.
And what people don't realize about dandyism is that it's essentially a conspiracy against aristocracy. It says all gentlemen are equal.
And this shift from formal to casual brings us once again back to the ascot. As I said, it was once the height of formality, worn on the fanciest occasions. But nowadays, it's viewed as so informal that you're literally forbidden to wear an ascot to the Royal Ascot, the event they were literally named after. Ascots aren't good enough to be invited to their own party. Okay, I'm trying to do what I can with this one, but I don't know, it's not the same. It looks really bad and sloppy. It's also not how Fred wears his ascot, unless you're counting a pup named Scooby-Doo, which I do. It's the best show. Yeah, they're just cut way too differently. I feel like I've been avoiding this, but we can't anymore. We have to address it. You know, I started this video with one simple question. Why does Fred wear an ascot? But at this point, it's clear that question needs revising. Does Fred wear an ascot?
Here's an ascot.
Yeah, I noticed that they're cut like that.
Thin at the neck, wide at the end.
Tapered to a little point there.
So this is probably what you got.
Yeah, that's what I got when I bought actual ascots or cravats from Amazon. When I looked for the Fred one, I got just a square. This is Evan Kinswood, and he was actually interviewing me for a video on his own channel when I casually mentioned that I was working on an essay about Fred's ascot. I am working on a video about Fred's ascot from Scooby-Doo, and
Oh my God, I am your perfect, guest or whatever. You know I'm a historic reenactor and do fashion history and stuff like that.
I actually didn't know that. Oh my gosh. Turns out Evan is really into historical dress and reenactments, and we spent the next full hour talking in depth about pieces of cloth that people tie around their necks. He was a massive help in explaining basically everything I've said in this video so far, but I was not prepared for him to shatter my world like this.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
Fred doesn't wear an ascot.
Okay.
He wears a neck silk.
He wears a neck silk. It's not even an ascot. A neck silk? What's that, like a bandana? That makes sense, actually. Because when I was trying to learn how to tie that ascot, the way I had it at the beginning of this video, I found this video by friend of the channel, Parker York Smith. I wasn't even trying specifically to find a video of his. The guy is just everywhere. Either way, he's tying a bandana, right? Fred's basically wearing a bandana.
It's a bandana. It's a neck silk.
Now, I know you're probably as disappointed as I am with this revelation, but regardless of terminology, we both know this little piece of orange fabric is always going to be Fred's ascot. And it's become more than just, some simple, trendy character design choice. It's evolved into a symbol of Fred's personality, and even a tool for storytelling.
You guys take the long way around. I'll hold him off.
I specifically love this moment in Monsters Unleashed, where Fred is 1v1ing the Black Night Ghost through Joust. The appearance of his ascot here evokes the imagery of knights donning ladies' favors, like ribbons, handkerchiefs, or scarves, before a duel as a way to signal that he is fighting for her honor. Now, obviously, this practice reflects the constrained ways in which women could exercise agency in a male-dominated society. Chivalry, like too many things, is rooted in misogyny, even being labeled as benevolent sexism in today's parlance. But I honestly think that's what makes this moment even cooler. Okay, just hear me out, all right? Throughout this film, Fred has been putting his foot in his mouth and getting his words twisted by the press.
You're trying to make it look like I think Coolsville sucks. No, don't record that.
Even the one phrase he's confident in speaking is taken by Shaggy.
Okay, gang, let's split up and search for clues.
He stole my thing that I say.
By the third act, Fred has resigned to shutting down completely. Talking isn't gonna solve anything. I would like to fight something.
Talking's for wimps. It's time for action.
So when he does his showdown with the Black Night Ghost, his ascot is the final piece of this arc. I really did throw it across the room. I'm gonna go get it. He's not styling it in a fashionable way. He's tying it tight around his throat. A visual metaphor for his refusal to speak. Because talking is for wimps. Then he gets hit so hard that his ascot just comes off. And this was an intentional detail because you can see when he lands, it's on, and then when they cut to another angle, it's like way over there. But now, with the ascot removed, he speaks his feelings and is vulnerable with Daphne. And only afterwards does he have a realization.
Can't you see we're talking?
Talking is for wimps.
Can't fool me with that macho facade. You're just afraid to show your sensitive side.
A children's movie from 2004 had an arc where a main character discovers and confronts toxic masculinity. And I'm always going to talk about it. And it goes deeper. Here's a clip from a DVD extra from the official home release of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?
Like a lot of people, Freddy has a signature look with just a touch of individuality.
Look at that!
That ascot around his neck says loud and clear that Freddy's in touch with his feminine side, yet secure in his own masculinity.
That explains a lot.
That clip came out just 10 days before the movie did, and is even more explicitly feminist. I will not stop until I have ruined Scooby-Doo for the worst people you know. This is my promise to you. It's not even an ascot. I thought it would be fun to see if my wife Emily could tie a cravat, but I also wondered if she could tie a bow tie or even just a regular necktie. Here's how that went. Oh, this feels so weird and wrong. It's backwards?
It's not right. Shut up!
You could have, I
know!
You had it easy and then...
No.
We recorded the whole experience and it was a riot. If you want to watch the full video, it will be available exclusively on my streaming service, Nebula. Nebula is a platform I co-founded with other creators as a place where we can elevate ourselves to a level above what we were previously capable of by coming together to create our own platform, and it's quickly become the most interesting, fastest growing independent video platform on the internet. I'm making a lot of videos for the end of this year, and part of my strategy is to make the process as frictionless as possible because my ADHD will often stop me from even starting. And I've put all of my best practices in an exclusive Nebula class where you can learn how to make a video the way that I do. I've loved getting to take my videos to the next level, and Nebula is enabling that for our entire list of creators. Better stories, better production value, and it only keeps getting better as time goes on. Along with Nebula originals like Jet Lag, Modern Conflicts, and Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend, Nebula is quickly becoming the answer to the question, how do you make art and content that is as high quality and interesting as traditional media without the corruption and exploitation associated with that industry? If you want access to exclusives like my Nebula class and high-quality, thoughtful videos from hundreds of other creators, you should join Nebula today by going to nebula.tv/NerdSync to get 40% off your annual plan. That's only $3 per month or $36 for the whole year when you use my link. And we've recently introduced guest passes for new Nebula subscribers. Share everything Nebula has to offer with a friend or a family member or adversary for all I care for free for an entire month. They don't have to give any payment information and there's no restrictions on what they can watch. Once again, that's nebula.tv/NerdSync to get 40% off of your annual plan, making it just $36 for the whole year. If you like my videos and want to learn how I make them, or just support me while also getting access to loads of other videos, originals, and classes, I think you're really gonna like Nebula.